Hey, there's my view. Here we go. We are now live. You are looking live at my view from my porch. Awesome. If you are looking at the replay right now, welcome. Good to see you here. Thank you for tuning in. If you are coming live, then I'm happy to see you too. Okay, I'm going to double tap and flip the camera around. No, that didn't work. Still figuring it out. Okay. Hi. We're on my porch again. This is my favorite Periscope spot. Hi, Jill. This is my first Periscope in the morning, and so I'm horrendously backlit. But I hope it's okay. I feel like I look okay, so maybe you guys can let me know, or I'll find a new morning spot. I don't know. But this is cool. Uh-oh. Oh, yay. Good. This is a really nice spot to sit, actually, in the morning, which is why I love it. So hi. If you are just joining me and this is your first time, hi, Camilla. Good to see you. Thank you, sweetheart. I am, and my phone's going to do the thing, the touchscreen thing. I love my phone. Did I mention that? I'm Amy Simpkins. I'm a life coach with lifearchitecting.com. That's my business, and today I am doing a book review of this book, Yes, Yes, Hell No, which is a book about, let me try and fix that lighting. Okay, it's a little book for making big decisions by Brian Whetten, and I wish I had written down where I got this book recommendation. I was listening to a podcast interview of someone else who I don't even follow, and that she was asked what was her most current influential book, and this is what she said. And so I wish I could give her a shout out, but thank you, anonymous person, because this book was an amazing read. And I have lots of my fancy torn up post-it note bookmarks in here because I would like to share with you the powerful insights that I got from this book. So this book is it gives you a little teaser that it's a little book for making big decisions. It's a guide for one kind of, it's funny because he calls it a technology which actually obviously really appeals to me being a nerd, that for making big decisions. But it's really a lot more than that. A lot of the insights that Brian went through on his journey are the same kind of insights that appeal to me on my journey in terms of spiritual awakening and understanding how the universe kind of works. Sorry about the camera flips. I'll just keep hitting the camera button and flipping the camera around. And so I'd like to share with you some of my biggest learnings from this book, and I have some quotes to share with you. But I do recommend it. So if you have to drop off, you just got the point of the broadcast. I recommend reading this book. It's a quick read. It's really eye-opening. It's got a lot of really great nuggets in there, and I think you'll really, really enjoy it. So the basic idea of the yes, yes, hell no part is that he divides your consciousness into 3 sections. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can divide your consciousness. Ooh, thanks for the hearts. You can tap on your screen and give me hearts if you like. What you're hearing, if you agree, and if it resonates with you, definitely tap, tap, tap to give me some hearts. So there are many ways you can slice and dice your psyche. I mean, Carl Jung sliced and diced it into 12 major archetypes. And then, you have there's all that id, ego, super ego stuff. So there's been lots of this slicing and dicing going on through history. But for the purposes of this book, we have the intuition, the reason, the voice of reason, and the voice of fear are the 3 ways that he slices and dices your consciousness. And so the point is, in order to make a big decision, you need to get a yes from your intuition. That means you're looking for a gut feeling that this is right, that as you're moving forward, it lights something up inside of you. Okay, so that's the first yes. the voice of intuition. The second yes comes from your voice of reason. And your voice of reason is there to check to see that it makes sense. Yes, there's, you can't prove the whole thing that your big decision will result in something amazing. But generally speaking, like, you have the resources, you can move forward, you're in a safe place. And if your voice of fear, which we'll get to in a moment, is screaming at you that there's a saber-toothed tiger and you're going to die, the voice of reason says, no, being scared that you're going to be embarrassed isn't really a saber-toothed tiger and you're not really going to die. And so that's the second yes, is that your voice of reason provides this filter of, like, yes, this first yes from your voice of intuition is realistic, and your voice of fear is just being silly, so you don't have to necessarily pay attention. The third voice comes from your voice of fear. And as I alluded to, your voice of fear comes from your most primal place. And so that is the place where your intuition or your psyche is trying to keep you from being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, or from running off a cliff while you're hunting a mastodon, and all of those sorts of truly scary and dangerous pursuits. And the problem is that in today's day and age, where most of us live, we don't have a lot of saber-toothed tigers. I've never run into one. And we don't have a lot of mastodons, although there are cliffs. And so our voice of fear tends to overreact to things that can't really hurt us, because for those of us living in the Western world, we're pretty safe, generally. And so your voice of fear tends to overreact on things and try and tell you there's a tiger and that you could be putting yourself in danger, when really mostly what you're risking is embarrassment or some kind of failure or something like that. That doesn't mean your voice of fear is always wrong. It just means you need to put it through that voice of reason filter to say, is this really dangerous? Is this really too big of a risk for me? But generally, the idea is that if your voice of intuition is saying yes, you are lit up from the inside. If your voice of reason is saying, yes, this makes sense, I have the resources, I am not in danger, and your voice of fear says, hell no, we don't want to do this, this is scary, you might be in danger, you might be risking, you might be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. This is a magic combination for saying yes to the decision, for going for it. When your voice of fear is screaming, hell no, but your intuition is lit up and say yes, move forward anyway. That's the idea behind the book. So I'm going to share with you now. So I recommend reading it. It's a simple concept, but it's a quick read of a book. But he's got a ton of great stories in here about making it work for you. But I'm going to share a few passages for you because they just really, and some of them are about that tool, the yes, yes, hell no tool. But some of them are just observations about his journey and how he came to this. So I'm going to go in order of where they come in the book, which is not necessarily a logical order. So the first passage here was talking about his spiritual journey, which really resonated with me because I came to this place too. He talks about one of his biggest struggles is seeking love and acceptance and being able to accept it. He lost a parent at an early age, and so feeling worthy of love was a big journey for him. And he says, for years I'd been seeking love out there, but on that day everything changed. Suddenly I knew, not as a concept, but as reality, that beneath all my fears, who I am is love. Infinite, indescribable love. That just worked so well for me because that perfectly describes my spiritual journey in the last, hearts for that, totally. I mean, if I could give hearts to the book, I would right there, because that totally describes my spiritual journey after years of searching for it out there and searching for guidance out there and searching for love out there and searching for the answer out there. I finally came to this place where I knew everything I need to be inside me already, built in there. And that everything you need at the core is love. And that everything stems from that love. And that infinite source of love, that is divine love, it's already built in there. It's not out there. You don't need to search for it. It's right inside. So I love that passage, and that just made me totally connect with Brian here. So this next chapter is talking about the practice of leaping, taking a leap of faith and being caught. And so, we're talking about leaps of faith, like when you get this yes, yes, hell no signal from your consciousness, that like yes intuitively, yes voice of reason, hell no from the fear, and you're scared and you don't know what's going on. You're going to take a leap of faith, and you're going to say, in the face of fear, in spite of the voice of fear, I'm leaping. I'm taking a leap of faith. And so he talks about this. What I didn't realize is that there are two types of faith: belief-based faith and action-based faith. And they work in very different ways. Belief-based faith is something you have. I have faith that our beliefs are true. And action-based faith is something you do. I'm taking a leap of faith. And I loved that distinction. And I think that's also the shift from belief-based faith, I can't even say it, belief-based faith to action-based faith, is a journey of maturity. This is me talking now, not the book. That my observations on this book. He goes on to describe more about belief-based faith versus action-based faith. Let me read a little bit from him on action-based faith. The practice of taking actions that cause you to grow is the whole point of this book. For action-based faith is nothing less than the practice of discovering the places where your spirit says, go forward, and your fear says, go back. It's the practice of gathering your courage and saying yes in the face of your fears. It's about living your purpose and walking your path. It's about leaping, and just as important, it's about being caught. And so it's having that faith that when you do take this leap of faith, that you're going to be caught, things are going to be all right, the path is going to work itself out. And it's just a different model than belief-based faith, which is a more childish version of faith, where you accept what you're told, as opposed to action-based faith, where you go and check it out, put it to the test. Love that. All right, here we go. This is from I've been trying to teach lately on the things you need to take in, the shifts you need to have happen when you're facing a midlife or a mid-career crisis. I'm focusing on careers and that moment when you get, oh my gosh, something has to give, something has to change. I think I need to quit my job, or something else has to give because I can't go on this way. And some of the principles I've been teaching on came out in this book, so I just wanted to read a couple of those. This is from chapter 16, The Gift of Flow, and it talks about focusing on where you want to go instead of what you're running away from, which is something I really, really strongly believe in, that focusing on what you don't want, maybe what you're coming from, focusing there doesn't work. You need to be focusing on what you're driving towards. And as you focus on what you're driving towards, then you naturally move away from those things in the back. And so it says that if you're focusing on where you're coming from, on the things you're trying to get away from, it's like wearing a spiritual kick-me sign. Ouch. I like that. Yeah, so don't put a spiritual kick-me sign on the back. So another big concept that I've been teaching on lately is finding a sweet spot. In between, you're finding a sweet spot, ideally in your career, in your life, where you, as an individual, get nourished and you feel fulfilled. So you're looking inward, you're looking into what you need, to what you want. And then by discovering what you need and you want, and the way you're nourished and you're fulfilled, then you can then turn around external facing, and you can then impact the world, leave your legacy, live your purpose, and you can bring those things to other people. You can bring fulfillment to other people and nourishment to other people. And so you're both looking inward, making sure that you're fulfilled and nourished, and you're looking outward and making sure that others around you, that you're bringing nourishment and fulfillment to others. And so it's this sweet spot of looking both directions at the same time. So it was total synchronicity when I read this, because he totally describes this principle and he put words to it. He calls that sweet spot the sweet spot of self-affirmation. And the first part here, he says, this was a major challenge for me until I discovered the crucial distinction between service and self-sacrifice. True service is a win-win for everyone involved, including you. You should be this is my aside. You should be nourished by your own service to others. See? Okay, back to Brian. It creates a cycle of giving and receiving that nourishes both parties. And then skipping on ahead, he talks about we have 3 choices for relationships. We actually have 4, but these are his 3 poor choices for relationships. Win-lose, lose-win, or lose-lose. Well, obviously we don't want a lose-lose relationship. That's bad. But so we have selfishness, where I win and you lose. That's one end of the spectrum. Or self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice is I lose, but you win. And neither of those works. We end up with war, with both sides losing in order to keep the other from winning. And so but we have a tendency to slip into these places, right? The place of selfishness is where I'm nourished, but you're not. And the place of self-sacrifice is where you get nourished by me and I'm not nourished. And that doesn't work either. And both of those are equally poor approaches. And so instead, we take care of our own needs. I'm reading now. Take care of our own needs, move up in consciousness, and shift to living from our heart and soul instead of from our fears and insecurities. Our worldview changes. Instead of seeing a world ruled by scarcity, we see a world filled with abundance. Instead of needing to duke it out between winners and losers, we're able to create win-win relationships instead. Okay, so that's Brian. And so I'll just add on to that and say that's the sweet spot. The sweet spot is win-win. I am nourished at the same time that I am able to nourish you. And so we both end up winning, we both end up feeling great together, and we both end up sustainable. Because I can only keep nourishing you if I feel nourished, right? I need to be sustained as an individual so that I can help others. And then I can then help others create sustainable journeys themselves. So it's this big positive feedback loop all of a sudden where everyone is nourished. Win-win situations. Love that. Oh my gosh. Okay, we got 3 left. I have 3 bookmarks left. Hang on with me, because I want to share these with you. Okay. This one's talking about goals. And this, again, relates to what I'm talking about with, like, your mid-career crisis or your midlife crisis, where you're like, oh my gosh, I just need to quit my job. Okay. He says, when some people hear this statement, I won't read the statement. When some people first hear this statement, they sometimes think it means they need to quit their job and do something different, completely different. But there are 2 ways to create more heartfelt goals. You can either change the goal or change the way you're pursuing that goal, which I totally agree with. And so this is also a thing that I'm trying to bring into my teaching and into my coaching, my personal private coaching, is that, yeah, we might get to a place, we're going to take a look at what you need, what you're looking for, how you need to be nourished, how you need to be fed. And maybe the answer on how to get there is to quit your job and do something else completely. So that would be a shift of the goal, setting a new goal. But maybe not. Maybe what you need is to pursue your current goal, but in a different way. And so we're also, and that can be introducing new self-care rituals. It can be introducing more support systems, external support systems. It can also be setting up systems that help you move through your goals and making it more structured, bringing more structure to your goals, helping you move forward. And so there's various different ways we can approach it. It's a whole spectrum of approaches to achieve your goals. It doesn't have to be like throw this goal in the trash can and then start over. Maybe you're on the right path, you're pursuing the right goal, but we need to build around it in a different way. Okay. And then, of course, yes, maybe the answer is to throw the goal in the trash can and start over. I mean, for me, I got to a point where that's what it was. It was time to move on to some different goal when I made my huge career shift from engineering to life coaching. For me, that's what it was, but that's not what it is for everybody. And it's not what it is every time for me. Sometimes for me, it's the way that I go about doing it. Okay, two more shares, and then you're going to go buy this book, right? Okay. This one I loved coming from the engineering background. So this doesn't have so much to do with the whole life coaching thing, but oh my gosh. The paradox of innovation is that the more desperately you need to be creative, the harder it is to access. Thanks, Jill. I appreciate that. Okay, let me read it again because this is awesome. The paradox of innovation is that the more desperately you need to be creative, the harder it is to access. And obviously that's true for creative pursuits like art and product development and whatever you're working on. But for me, coming from engineering, where we're supposed to be innovators and we were supposed to be doing the next big thing, this was so frustrating, is that you felt like you needed to be innovative, but it's harder to access. And in fact, in the corporate environment, accessing that creativity was almost clamped down upon because you're so, it's this paradox. It's this dichotomy of being so desperate for it, but then so afraid of it at the same time. And it was sort of like, as a corporate entity, we were so afraid. We listened to this voice of fear that said, hell no, like just do it the way it's always been done. Just adapt something we've already done before, something proven. And it just makes that creativity hard to access, which was a huge reason why I needed to change my goal entirely, because I needed that creative expression and I needed that outlet for innovation that I just wasn't finding. Okay, last one that I'm going to share from the book. And so this is cool. This is really cool. So the book goes through, just to give you some of the book review, there's a few different parts. There's 4 main parts. The first part is describing that yes, hell no technology for decision making. The second part is talking about what happens after you put that into practice. The third section is all about fear, because fear, learning to identify that where the hell no is coming from, that the hell no is coming from the voice of fear, and that you need to like really dig into it and kind of question it and see where that's coming from and see if it's a real saber-toothed tiger or if it's just being silly. And so there's a whole section on that. And then the last part is called 10 Steps to Mastery, and it's a really like practical application of how to put this into practice in kind of a step-by-step sort of way, which I love because I love practical application. I'm an engineer. And so that's where this little bit comes from, is about putting this into, it says, how do you actually put this into practice? This is, where are we here? Chapter 34, grounding your decisions. They're short chapters. Don't be intimidated by 34 chapters. They're very short. The whole book is only a couple hundred pages. You can do it. It's easy. Okay. Read the book. Okay, so chapter 34, it says, how do you actually put this into practice? How do you take an inspiring intention and turn it into a string of small, steady steps? Isn't that the question, right? Isn't that the question? We all have these huge dreams, but then it comes down to the rubber meeting the road and we're moving forward. And how the heck do you do that? How do you put the car into gear and like go? Okay. All right. The key is to break your big goal down into a series of smaller goals. Okay, you may have heard that before. Yak, 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 yak. And then, this is my favorite part. This is what I underlined. And then to create a plan of action that includes systems, practices, and skills. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is me, Amy, not Brian. I love that triumvirate of of execution. That is exactly, if you had to put like what I do into a nutshell, that is what I do. Systems, practices, and skills. So let's define them. A system is a formula for how to do something. It's a recipe for a cake, a plan for a business, or the instructions for that frustrating toy you bought with some assembly required. Okay, so that's a system. Then let me skip ahead where he says practices. Once you have a system you trust, it's time to create new practices. Turn your goal into a series of regular habits. I also like to call these practices or habits rituals. To me, ritual incorporates a spiritual element into it. And I do believe that most everything we do, especially these habits, these routines, these practices, they have a spiritual element because they are all designed to be nourishing and nurturing. And so ritual has a spiritual element. So you develop these practices, and then going to the gym and exercising at least 3 times a week is ritual because it's nourishing your body. And cooking healthy meals for your family is ritual because it's creating physical nourishment, and it's also nourishing the relationships you build while you're creating those meals and eating over those meals and those sorts of things. Establishing a meditation practice to clear your head. Meditation can totally, obviously, be a spiritual practice, but also it can just be creating space for yourself. And if you need that in order to innovate and create, like we talked about, it's a ritual. It's this spiritual component. And so all these little mundane things we do have this spiritual component, that we do them because they're nurturing, nourishing, fulfilling. So I like to call practices rituals. Okay, so we've got systems, practices, and skills. So the third step is to develop the necessary skills. If you want to learn tennis, you got to be able to hit the ball. That's what Brian says. If you want to play the piano, you have to learn the notes. If you want to be a programmer, you must be able to code. Right. And so see how that's a separate category from the system, the framework, the structure of what you're doing. The practices, which are the rituals, the habits you get into, but now in the actual nitty-gritty details of the execution, do you have the skills you need to bring those practices into your life? And if you don't, you need to get them. That is the first step. And I like that really practical breakdown, and I'm totally going to use that now in my teaching and coaching because it makes so much sense to me, and it puts so much practical chutzpah behind some of this esoteric spiritual stuff. Don't get me wrong, I like the esoteric spiritual stuff too. Any questions for me? I'll ramble for a couple more minutes, but I'm almost done. That's all the quotes I wanted to share. I'll just do a really quick recap of what we talked about. But if you have a question, and it can be about the book, or it can be about anything that I'm doing right now, or it can be about my front porch, you can type it into the comment field right now and I'll answer it. So as a recap, today we did a book review of Yes, Yes, Hell No, which is a little book for making big decisions. It's by Brian Whetten. I'll put Whetten. Hopefully, did that come out backwards? I don't even know. But there you go, Whetten. And it's yes from the voice of intuition, yes from the voice of reason, and a hell no from your voice of fear, because most of the time your voice of fear is just being a wimp. And that's your magic formula. Go for it. Do the hard thing. Take a leap of faith. Connect with me. If you need external support on this, you can connect with me at Life Architectin, which is Life Architecting without the G. That's my handle on Twitter and Periscope. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're leaving hearts. I'm so glad you got a lot out of this, Jill. That's awesome. And I do seriously, I recommend the book. It's a quick read, and it's It's really good stuff. And I'm totally going to use some of these tools in my teaching and in my coaching. You can also send me email anytime, amy@lifearchitecting.com. I would love to hear from you, and if you need extra support to work through your journey, whatever you're going through. Okay, that's it for me from my front porch. Make it a great day. Mwah.